Time was when the unemployment rate got low enough, the competition for workers meant that wages would rise, and then top-level economists would start talking about possible inflation. But a couple of years ago, unemployment got below 4%, and yet wages didn't rise. What went wrong? Did people forget to demand higher wages? Did employers forget to offer higher wages? Or was there another reason for wage stagnation during what should have been a very good time for workers? It turns out that the way they determine the official unemployment rate is seriously messed up, and it's getting worse. We're going to look at how unemployment is figured and list the 3 top reasons why the official unemployment rate is wrong on this episode of Progressive Solutions. As always, I want to hear from you. What other topics would you like to see covered? Write your thoughts and ideas in the comments below. I really enjoy researching, writing, recording, and editing these videos. If you enjoy watching them, please hit that thumbs up button below, and be sure to subscribe. Also, ring the bell so you can be notified as future videos come out. And spread the word. There are a lot of progressive solutions, and the more we can get them out there, the better off we'll all be. The way they figure the unemployment rate is pretty straightforward. They survey tens of thousands of people every month. They try and figure out how many people 16 or over are either working or looking for work, and then they determine what percentage of those people don't have a job. And that's the official unemployment rate. So why is this number wrong? Well, let's get into it. Okay, reason number 1. This reason goes back decades and is largely the fault of these guys. Steve Wozniak invented the Apple computer, Steve Jobs popularized it, and then Bill Gates came along and made Windows the system that, well, pretty much everybody uses. As a result of more powerful, less expensive, and easier to use computers, a lot of people started setting themselves up as independent contractors. Now, officially, independent contractors are never unemployed, so even when they're not working, they're considered to be working. Also, a lot of companies have found ways to call their employees independent contractors in order to avoid paying payroll taxes, health insurance, and other benefits and costs. Some companies, such as Microsoft, have gotten into hot water for overdoing this. Today, at least 25 million Americans, and possibly as many as twice that number, get a substantial amount or even all of their income as independent contractors. That's about 1/6 to 1/3 of the entire workforce. And almost all of them are never considered to be unemployed. Reason number 2 is part-time work. People who work part-time are still considered to be fully employed, even if they're only working part-time. The percentage of part-time jobs hasn't changed much in the last few decades, but the people who hold part-time jobs has. 50 years ago, part-timers were usually students, second-income workers, or semi-retirees, people who just wanted to make a few extra bucks. Today's part-timers are increasingly primary wage earners. There's a lot of talk about people who hold down 2 or even 3 jobs just to make a living, but since 1994, when the Bureau of Labor Statistics began counting, the percentage of people who have multiple jobs hasn't changed much. And indeed, multiple job holders would not be counted twice, since the unemployment rate is based on surveys of people, not employers. Women are twice as likely as men to be part-time job holders, and people of color are almost twice as likely to have a part-time job as are white non-Hispanic people. In other words, full-time jobs are still quite scarce for people who need them the most. A lot of companies, especially in the retail and service sectors, cut back on hours as the result of Obamacare, but a couple of things about that. First, they had to hire more workers, so the unemployment rate went down, even though workers' hours decreased. And the second thing is, a lot of those jobs with the cutback hours were already classified as part-time. Those workers went from nearly full-time to not nearly full-time. Reason number 3 is a little discussed topic, but it's the most important. It's the labor force participation rate. This number is the percentage of Americans 16 or older who either have a job or are looking for a job. Even small changes in this number can have a huge effect. From 1947 through 1967, that number was consistently between 58 and 60%. Most married women didn't work, and almost all men did. But starting in 1968, the number jumped above 60%, and then it continued to rise as more and more women entered the workforce. 20 years later, the number was at 66%, and it topped out at 67% in the late 1990s. Then it started to fall, and it's been falling ever since. There are a couple of reasons for the fall. One is that baby boomers started to retire, and it was slow at first, but it's been increasing more recently. The thing is, baby boom retirement doesn't count for that much. Oh yeah, millions of people are retiring every year, but in a typical year, millions of people would retire anyway, and the difference isn't that big. The big reason is that people have given up looking for work. It used to be pretty easy in much of the country for a high school student to get a part-time job at a fast food chain or other low-wage job, earning money to pay for their teenage costs. But many of those jobs now are held by adults, and teens just don't have the opportunity that they used to have decades ago. As a result, a lot of people are postponing entering the job market, and a lot of older kids and even young adults are still living at home with their parents. That's one of the reasons why Obamacare lets you stay on your parents' health insurance until you're 26. In addition, a lot of middle-aged adults are retiring early, being basically forced out of the job market by ageism and decreasing opportunities. They're basically living off savings, and many are hoping to re-enter the job market again, partly because they're going to need to. Meanwhile, they're holding on to whatever they have, and that's a large reason why millennials don't have as much purchasing power as previous generations had. So a lot of people are moving in with other people, including moving back in with their parents, living off savings, or finding gray market jobs to help pay the bills, and those jobs, they don't show up in the official numbers. Why have they given up? Because for more and more Americans, the economy stinks. At the end of 2007, just before the crash, almost 66% of Americans were still in the labor force. Within 2 years, that number had dropped 1.5 points to its lowest level in 25 years. Over the next decade leading up to the pandemic, the number dropped another 1.5 points, and then, well, it's even lower today. The January 2021 figure is 61.4%, the lowest figure in almost 45 years. And this is all despite the fact that the number of self-employed people and people who are self-employed are considered to be in the labor force even if they aren't earning anything as long as they're just trying. Well, that number of self-employed people has skyrocketed, tripling since just 2003. When we look at the difference between the labor force just before the pandemic and the labor force 20 years earlier, it means that 10 million Americans dropped out. The official unemployment rate for September of 2019 was 3.5%, by far the best number in decades. But if we count just half of the 10 million Americans who have dropped out, that number jumps to 6.7%. And remember, we're still counting all those millions of newly self-employed as working, even if they're not making very much. And that's the best official number we've had in 50 years. But an actual unemployment rate of 6.7% isn't very good, and that means that employers don't have to raise wages. But the actual unemployment rate is even worse. We're also counting as fully employed a lot of people who are also doing gig work like Uber or Lyft, or even making pennies at a time through online micro-job schemes like Amazon's Mechanical Turk. If we put in all those numbers, we count part-time jobs as only partially employed, the real unemployment rate, even during the best of times, was probably around 10%. We need to reset completely the way we figure the official unemployment rate, and we need to go back and reset the unemployment rate for the last 50 years. We also need to enact policies that help more people earn a good living, and help a lot more people manage even if they only have part-time or gig work. Some of these ideas include: a sufficiently high minimum wage ensures that full-time workers can make at least a half-decent living, and that many more part-time workers can get by. Also, a higher minimum wage can save a lot of companies a lot of money. First, because workers can be a lot more productive. They'll be willing to work harder. And second, because workers won't quit their jobs as often, and companies don't have to spend a lot of time and money hiring new workers. I mentioned Amazon's Mechanical Turk. On that system, people earn literally pennies per gig. It's almost impossible for anyone to earn even a couple of dollars an hour. And the same goes for the more well-known gig jobs like Uber and Lyft and now DoorDash and Instacart. The providers of these gigs must be required to make sure that their gig workers earn at least the minimum wage. We also have to tighten and enforce the rules that determine who is an employee and who can actually qualify to be an independent contractor. We need to make sure that companies aren't using independent contractors as an excuse to pay their people less money. We also need new tax and trade policies that not only reduce companies' desire to send jobs overseas, but also induce them to bring a lot of those jobs back. Many of those jobs pay quite well, and there are plenty of ways to tweak corporate taxes and trade policies to get that effect. Stronger pro-union laws, allowing workers to organize more easily and giving unions more power, will bring back better pay for all Americans, not just the newly unionized, and reinvigorate the middle class. For more on the middle class, you can see my video on the history of the middle class, which I've linked up here and down in the description below. We also have to come to terms with the fact that a lot of jobs are still being lost to automation, and that the pace of automation has gotten faster than ever before. We may have to face the fact that automation is taking away more jobs than we can replace. Implementing a universal basic income will make it possible for more people to make a decent living on minimum wage, part-time, or even gig work, as well as low-paying self-employment work. It would also take some of the sting out of job losses from automation and open up new opportunities for entrepreneurs. For more on universal basic income and how we can pay for it, here's another video I've done, again, linked up here and in the description below. There's certainly a lot more we can do. This list is just a start. What ideas do you have to help workers in the 21st century economy? Let me know your thoughts and ideas in the comments below. Meanwhile, thanks for watching. Stay progressive. It would also take some of the sting out of job losses from increased automation and open up new opportunities for entrepreneurs. New opportunities for entrepreneurs. That's what it is.